On February 2nd, 2008, Rhoda McFarland managed to slip her restraints and dial 911 from the back room of a Lane Bryant store just outside Chicago. She had been detained, along with 5 other women, and she managed to whisper a few short words to the dispatcher before the line disconnected. Just moments later, all but one of the women would be dead. The perpetrator had no clear motive, and despite a surviving eyewitness, quick police response, and nationwide attention, the killer has evaded police for 14 years. What happened in the Lane Bryant store that day, and who was responsible for one of the worst unsolved mass shootings in U.S. history? That Saturday morning, Rhoda McFarland drove to the Brookside Marketplace, an outdoor shopping mall at 191st and Harlem in the Tinley Park area. Formerly, Rhoda had served as a nurse practitioner in the United States Air Force and later became an ordained minister. She had survived a divorce and recently found a new man, Stuart Gibbs, and she was engaged to be married. Rhoda had been manager of the Lane Bryant clothing store, a plus-size women's clothing outlet, for 2 years. She wasn't scheduled to work on February 2nd, but the store was understaffed, and the only employee scheduled to open that day was a 33-year-old nursing student and part-time employee who would not be named. Advertisements indicated a large clearance sale would be happening at the store, so it was likely to be a busy day. The two opened at 10 a.m., and a handful of customers filed in before a man entered the store. He walked to the register and struck up a conversation with the 2 women who believed him to be a delivery man. As the manager, Rhoda knew a delivery wasn't scheduled for that day. She called other Lane Bryant stores to determine if there was a mix-up. Within 15 minutes, the man pulled a .40 caliber Glock handgun from his pocket and announced that he was robbing the store. He corralled 2 shoppers with the 2 employees. He confiscated the money from the register, then collected near $200 in jewelry from his 4 abductees. Then he escorted the women to the back of the store and taped their hands and feet together with duct tape, forcing them to lie face down. He made sexual advances while the women were detained, groping one of them. Strangely, he took underwear from a nearby display and put it on the heads of all 4 women. This was likely an attempt to block their vision, but sexual deviation cannot be ruled out as his motivation. Customers continued to enter the store, and the man would detain them at gunpoint, directing them to the back with the others. He abducted 2 more women, one of whom tried to resist and fight. He struck her in the face with his pistol before restraining her. While the man had seemed calm at first, he was becoming more agitated. So far, 40 minutes had passed since he had entered the store, but his demeanor and behavior were becoming erratic. It was at this time that Rhoda attempted to secretly dial 911 using her Bluetooth headset. The following audio was released by police. However, it has been doctored to only contain the voice of the perpetrator.
911 emergency. Lane Bryant.
No! Go ahead. Something to do, huh? Put it again. Put that up here. I'm looking at bullshit.
Shortly after the line disconnected, the gunman would open fire on his hostages. The mass shooting was described as execution style. McFarland was shot in the forehead and 4 of the other women were shot in the back of the head. The only survivor would turn her head at the last second and the shot would graze her neck. She played dead until help arrived. A police officer was in the outdoor shopping mall at a neighboring store, and he responded to Lane Bryant within a minute. However, the perpetrator had already fled the scene. Countless officers responded, some from neighboring counties. They searched each store with guns drawn, combing aisle after aisle for the perpetrator. Helicopters were called in, and divers searched a nearby retention pond for the murder weapon. They recovered shell casings at the scene, and the survivor described a coffee cup the man had brought into the store with him. The surviving eyewitness was never identified to the public for fear of the murderer taking reprisal on her or her family. She was the 33-year-old nursing student and part-time employee. She spoke with police after being released from the hospital the next day. Her description was developed into a police sketch and released less than 2 weeks after the crime. The perpetrator was described as being between 5'9" and 6'2", with a broad build and husky. He had medium to dark skin complexion and was between 25 and 35 years old at the time. He wore a dark-colored jacket and black jeans with embroidery on the back pocket that appeared to be a cursive G, which could have been from the G-Unit clothing brand. He was well-groomed, with manicured fingernails, and he wore his hair in broad cornrows. A single braid hung on the right side of his head with 4 green beads. Initially, more than 50 detectives were working the case in Tinley Park. They reviewed tapes from security in the area, added extra patrols, and investigated over 200 initial tips. Security footage was recovered, and Dr. David Hathaway, a NASA scientist, was paid to enhance the footage. As a result, investigators identified 2 cars of interest, a dark SUV and a sedan, one pulled in front of the store at 10:39 a.m. and the other a minute later. Both vehicles left at 10:46 a.m. Police are uncertain if the drivers were witnesses or if one of the vehicles was being driven by the perpetrator. Frustratingly, Interstate 80 is only a few minutes away from the store and a likely route of egress. Investigators have not been entirely forthcoming about what evidence was recovered from the scene. However, it has been confirmed that they captured shoe prints. Investigators have implied that they recovered DNA, but they have not revealed if it is a large enough or workable sample. If not, they may be waiting for forensic technology to advance. The women were in the store with the offender for around 40 minutes and did not indicate that they recognized the man, implying he was likely a stranger. However, detectives explored the lives of the 6 victims to exclude the possibility that this crime was personally motivated. Sarah Zafransky, 22, came from a Catholic upbringing. She was married, and her husband were homebodies. She had recently graduated from Northern Illinois University with a degree in finance and joined CNA Financial Corporation as an accountant. That Saturday morning, she was shopping for winter work clothes. Carrie Chioso, 33, had earned a bachelor and master's from DePaul and Loyola universities. She had dedicated herself as a social worker to helping at-risk youth at the same high school she attended a little more than a decade earlier. She had been married for 2 years to Tony Chioso, and she had stopped at Lane Bryant to shop for clothes for an upcoming reunion with old college friends. Jennifer Bishop, 34, was an ICU nurse at South Bend's Memorial Hospital. She had been working there for over a decade, and she was a shift supervisor. She had 3 children, and she was traveling to Tinley Park that weekend with her husband, who was there for a work conference. Her birthday had been a few short days earlier, and she was likely at Lane Bryant spending a gift card she had received as a present. Connie Woolfolk, 37, was a mother of 2 boys, one of whom had spina bifida. His special needs meant that she rarely had time for herself, but that Saturday she had plans to meet friends at a pizza place in Tinley Park. She went for a manicure and pedicure before and had an appointment with a client. She worked as a mortgage lender and even had a second job stocking shelves at the Super Target in the same outdoor shopping mall as the Lane Bryant store. She was at the store to purchase an outfit for her night out. Connie was the one victim who fought back against the gunman. Rhoda McFarland, 42, had previously been an associate pastor at the Embassy Christian Center Church, but she left the organization after a disagreement with George Aha, the head pastor. In less than a half year after the murders, police began to investigate this angle after they uncovered a 20-minute phone call placed by a former embassy member that had been routed to the cell tower nearest the Lane Bryant store just an hour before the murders occurred. Police flew to Texas to interview Aha, the former proprietor and pastor who had moved to the area to start a new nonprofit. They conducted interviews with former congregation members, organizational leaders, and Aha himself to learn about McFarland and the church's internal issues. Aha had taken a second mortgage on the church property before migrating to Austin. He left McFarland in charge of the property. However, this started rumors of financial mismanagement, as members believed they were close to paying off the building. Aha refused to answer specific financial questions, and McFarland eventually chose to leave. Some have suggested that perhaps McFarland had uncovered financial misdeeds after all, and the killing was the result of a failed intimidation or attempted cover-up. Police believed this was a botched robbery from a man who was addicted and likely under the influence of drugs. Robbing a retail store in the early hours indicates a lack of consideration and preparedness. These stores would have minimal cash reserves on hand at the time. Additionally, the robbery took over 40 minutes, and the gunman began to lose control and become agitated. According to an unnamed source that spoke to the Chicago Sun-Times, law enforcement believed the man had planned to continue to abduct and rob customers as they entered the store. It's likely that he did not intend to shoot the women, as he took precautions to restrain and blindfold them. However, he must have panicked when he caught McFarland talking to the police and felt compelled to eliminate all of the witnesses. In 2018, police converted the sketch into a 3D model. It was the 10th anniversary of the crime, and investigators did a media blitz with the hopes of finally unlocking the case. DNA and fingerprints were recovered from the scene. However, investigators have not found a match in any law enforcement databases. In 2022, 2 new detectives were assigned to the case, Jeff Gravers and Roger Davison. The police chief, Matt Walsh, hopes that fresh sets of eyes will help solve the case. Assuming the police thoroughly investigated George Aha and cleared him of any involvement, 2 additional theories remain. One of the leading online theories is that the killer was actually a woman. Some believe that the witness was mistaken about the killer's gender. They point to features like broad cornrows, beaded braids, and manicured fingernails. Even the police sketches portray a rounder face with fuller cheeks. A workable DNA sample could determine the gender of the killer, but it's uncertain if the sample is usable. Another proposed theory is that a local convict, Corey Frierson, was responsible for the murders. In 2010, Frierson and an accomplice robbed a First Midwest bank at 4101 183rd Street. Armed with weapons, bulletproof vests, and black ski masks, They stole every last bill from the bank. The FBI searched Fryerson's Richton Park home and found cash from the bank, ski masks, and shoes that matched prints from the scene. He was featured on America's Most Wanted and locally on Chicago's Most Wanted. In April of 2010, he was stopped by police officers for a traffic offense in Lexington, Mississippi. When officers ran his driver's license, which was an Ohio counterfeit, he fled his vehicle and disappeared into the woods. Frierson was on the run for 2 years before calling the FBI to turn himself in 2012. He served his sentence for the robbery, but more recently, Frierson was arrested and convicted of Class X felony trafficking of a controlled substance and possession with the intent to distribute more than 900 grams of fentanyl. Frierson bears a close resemblance to the description of the shooter in the Lane Bryant case. Additionally, Frierson has a history of robbery. However, if police had prints and/or DNA, Frierson must have been cleared as a suspect when these were collected during intake for his previous arrest. With no truly compelling theory behind this case, it's likely to go unsolved until police uncover new evidence or testimony. Those who lost their lives that day had planned to stop at Lane Bryant for a few short minutes to prepare for a future they didn't know they would never see. Instead, they were detained, kidnapped, and murdered by a perpetrator who is still out there somewhere, a man or woman willing to kill for next to nothing.